Jenna and I have been exchanging books since we got here. Both love a lot of sort of strong women writers, and it's an influence on her work, which I think it's really nice to sort of find those little bits of influence in the paintings. I think her work's really sort of gestural and intuitive and process-based in a way that feels connected to what I do. And I've been thinking a lot about color. I heard Mark Doty say something about relationships between painters and poets, that that there's a generative jealousy because we can't make silence, and when we make color it has to unfold through time and it doesn't have the immediacy. And when I think about the artists here who are working with color, I think about Jenna's work, so that's I feel the most generative jealousy with her paintings. You have tools that I do not have as a writer, as a painter, and maybe approaching some of the same ideas but with a really different set of tools. And I think the tool painters have that maybe writers have, but not as in a different way as silence. It's really hard to make silence in a poem, and it's, I think, a lot easier to make silence in a painting. So that's something I'm always jealous of. I always wrote poetry from when I was really little. And I've been trying to figure out why it started. But I think it has to do with as a child, I think it was almost like a religious impulse that I wanted to speak about things that felt really inexpressible to me, and therefore the only way to express them was the sort of approximation of figurative language, the approximation of metaphor. You can't speak of what it is, you can only sort of speak about what it's not or what it's close to. So that was what initially drew me to it. I'm gonna read a couple of like kind of more formal things because I've been writing more formal stuff since getting here. I'm not sure, there isn't like a reason for that, except that I think sometimes when you're caught between projects or need to process that involves like sort of stepping away from things a lot, but I'm here and I want to be spending my time well, so that means sort of generating little other meditative projects or other things that you're doing. This is a poem. The sort of landscape of it is out west, actually. I lived in Colorado for a few years when I was young, and I had a teacher read this and say, well, these aren't the regular plants of your poems, like, are you wrong? Did you get confused about where plants come? I'm like, no, this is just in a different place. So it's out in Colorado, and my family farms, and they have this idea that they could potentially be producing everything that they need to live. But there's a few things that are hard. Caffeine's hard, and sugar is really hard. But a lot of the sugar we eat comes from sugar beets, which I think most people think it comes from cane, but a lot of it comes from sugar beets. You can grow those in Colorado, so when you're decided I'm gonna make sugar beet sugar. Apparently I was actually wrong about what happened, that we got slightly more than I thought of, but it was really kind of inedible. It was really like tasted like dirt, like sweet dirt. So anyway, the poem's called Beta Vulgaris. It's originally an ecotown, and Beta Vulgaris is the Latin name for beets. Let's make sugar, my father said. We began with the garden's blank grid, measured out rows with tape and rod, the taut demand of thread, of wire. We tuned the flat earth behind the old machine shed, turned the key towards sweetness. Each fourth row planted marigolds, whose bitter punch of scent and sun sent the mule deer's velvet noses towards other gardens, towards the plunge of burning irrigation ditches and coyotes rubbing the night all wrong, while the beets tightened their fists around the earth's dark throat. Drought stepped ponderous over our sky, dragged its shimmering bad leg behind, Heat made black snakes on the road where there were none. Wet rags around our throats, we knelt to pull 2 plants of 3 from every row to pinch their green candles out. Evening, the eastern sky would bruise and preen with heat lightning, nothing more. Thirsty, beets lose sweetness fast, grow bitter around their lack. We went to bed still dirty, saved our slim allotment of water for the plants. My father snapped, like my finger in the slamming door. He ground clots of dirt to dust between his furious hands. Fire in the foothills and something wrong in the soil. Gravel marked our knees when we knelt to weed. I willed the leaves to grow past the width of my now crooked finger. We pulled purslane, red-threaded as an eyelid, thistles that dried to thick tinder for the prairie to flint. When finally we began to rip the beets up by their leaves, the roots were smaller than we had hoped. We dumped their foliage, its broken ribs in the pasture to steam and rot, gathered their dirty knuckles in pots, left our spades to rust in the gutted plot. All night, we sliced them thin into the heavy bottom pot. We added sugar, hoped the liquid would gather at its geometry, hoped its rim of sweetness was enough for the beets to cling against. Sugar begets sugar, we prayed, and watched my father fail to wring some goodness from the dirt. The crystals that formed were too few to fill his calloused palm. We ate them for dessert. Their penny taste stayed on our tongues for all the years we lived with my father by the garden, all the years we were young. Late that night, I walked the pulp out to the edge of the prairie, past the quiver of miller moths who lingered by the motion sensor light's dim bulb. I left the mush in the prairie's gloom for the mountain lions who waited in the cottonwoods, or for the small creatures those lions would come to consume. I didn't actually think about it when I printed these 2 poems this morning. It was in the Sugar House Review, whose little emblem is the sugar beet, so maybe that's a connection. And it's a sonnet night. Like I said, I've been working on sonnets here, but I was thinking about this one because how different, when it came out, how different people's reactions were to it, that women read it really strongly one way and men read it really strongly in another way, and that one that I just read also, it's either a poem about gardening or a poem about violence, and very few people see it as both. And you learn, it's a poem you learn a lot about people's subjectivity or a lot about their place in the world or their experiences with trauma by how they read these things. So this one was one that had that effect where I was like, oh wow, I know so much more about you by how you reacted to this poem. Anyway, it's called Ritual. He says he thinks I want to see his cock. He says, I promise it won't hurt you. Outside, a car crash claps. It's 4 o'clock. The cat has peed behind the fridge, and through the pain, the streets unleash the day's long heat. The ants draw dark cartography around a squirrel, her red insides. The curtains beat against the reeling fan. All over town, young boys walk home with clarinets. The bus sighs and breaks. It kneels like a girl. The breaks loose as children's teeth. The chickadees fuss over bread mixed with earth. He lifts his dick like a candle, a bird. It does not light the growing dark. It does not lift its wings in flight. I used to hang out at this dive bar in Michigan where they always had skate videos on in the background. And of course, you know, I was like a little teenage punk, so I always hung out with the skater kids, and all those videos always have a reel at the end of people falling, and there isn't like a single skate video out there that doesn't have a fall reel in it. But it's not something that people acknowledge that we enjoy watching. Not people we're jealous of, not people who aren't talented, not people, like we just like it. I can't stop watching teenage boys eat shit at the skate park. It gives me real pleasure. I imagine pulling the stitched pennies of scabs from their shoulders and knees. A man barks at me like a dog from the window of his car. A man shouts, "I want to fuck you in the..." I lost the last word to the parking lot's rattling sea. I think it was ass. It could have been mouth. The computer can't stop suggesting yours truly. There are only so many combinations of words. I can't stop reading articles about the woman who pushed her dead toddler on a swing for a full night and day. My mother wouldn't have done that. I mean, so few of us are original in our disorder. The computer can't stop suggesting to whom it may concern. Suggests I might be hurting my eyes staring at the screen so long. It might have been pussy, but that seems unlikely. I imagine pulling the boys' torn white t-shirts over their heads. They aren't hurt, not really, not badly. They don't smell good. That's okay. I run them hot water. I test it with my wrist, fingers too practiced at pain to tell me when things are too much. The computer can't stop suggesting I sell someone my eggs. Girls like you can make big money. It knows my height because I bought those jeans, the chimney fire of my marriage, my student loan debt, breast size. It must know I'm not well inside, that I've spent hours reading about the woman who drove the wrong way down the Taconic Parkway with a car full of kids. The abscess in her mouth, the gut's thrum of clear liquor. People get pissed when they talk about Diane. I lick every word clean. Still, the computer wants my eggs, the ugly teeming of my innards. A man sends me a message online. I want to come on your face, tits, ass. Strangers know something the computer doesn't. Should have guessed. There are only so many kinds of girl I am permitted to be. It's hard not to imagine a child slinking down my steep wooden stairs. The way each thump of the body downward is inevitable, but still makes my face break just slightly, the smoke sucked back into the red hole of my mouth. I'll be at the bottom. I'll be watching. Watching is what I know how to do.